Hi, welcome to Oma's Kitchen.
Oregano.
Today we're going to make some home-canned crushed tomatoes. I went to the farmer's market and got a half a bushel of garden or field tomatoes and a couple of pounds of heirloom tomatoes. Aren't they pretty? I've run my jars through the dishwasher with the heated dry cycle. Since I don't know how many crushed tomatoes this will make, I wash all my jars. Here's my equipment, including my red apron. I got this in Strasbourg, France, and it makes me look like an old-fashioned German Frau. The first step is to boil the skins from the tomatoes and chop them up. You'll need a couple of flat bowls or plates with a deep edge, a hand strainer or slotted spoon, and 2 big pots. Here's the recipe, and my yield was about 8 quarts of crushed tomatoes. Fill 1 large pot about 2/3 full of water and add 3 to 5 tomatoes at a time. Bring to a low boil and look for the split skins on the tomatoes. Then remove the tomatoes to a bowl and add new tomatoes to the simmering pot. It doesn't matter if there's a little tomato juice mixed in with the water. Cut the split tomatoes and peel off the skins. Some people leave the tomatoes whole and can them at this point. I like to chop them and then cook and crush them a little in their own juice before canning. I find this makes them easier to add to my stews, chili, and spaghetti sauces through the winter. Use the strainer to add new tomatoes to the pot so you don't splatter hot water on yourself. I have a red spatula just for tomato dishes, and I use it to crush the tomatoes. It does take a couple of hours to skin, chop, and cook the tomatoes. I won't include much of this process, just long enough to play you some tomato canning blues. Once you have your first pot full of crushed tomatoes finished and cooked, boil off some lids in hot water so you can put your first batch in jars. Here's my lids with the magnet tool to pick them up. Here's the first of 3 potfuls of crushed tomatoes. You'll need the bottled lemon juice for your jars, 2 tablespoons for the quart jars, and 1 tablespoon for the pint jars. This brings up the acidity and deters bacteria. I only add lemon juice for a couple of jars at a time. Leave a headroom of about 1 inch in the quart jars and at least a half an inch in the pint jars. This allows the tomatoes to get really hot in the canner without popping your jars open. This. Not much more. Okay. You can see why I don't have the sound up during most of this video. I have my kitchen fan on high most of the time. Between the boiling tomatoes and the boiling water, it really needed to be on. The sound is much better with voiceover. Adding lemon juice as I go keeps me from wasting it in jars I'm not going to use. Before starting the second potful of tomatoes, I seal the first jars with their lids and rings. Wipe the rims with a clean, damp paper towel. Make the rings as tight as you can by hand, and the jars are hot. I had to get a towel. Here's the second batch. I'm adding lemon juice to more jars now, 2 tablespoons for the big ones, 1 tablespoon for the small ones. I like having some small ones for soups or to make pizza sauce. One of them isn't quite full, so I will finish that one with the third batch. Once all your tomatoes are skinned and your last batch is finishing cooking, fill your canning pot about 2/3 or 3/4 full of water and turn it on high heat. It does take a long time to boil. Set the rack on the edge. Okay, for my last batch of tomatoes, you'll notice I have 1 quart jar that's about 3/4 of the way full at the end. That's okay. As long as it's mostly full, it will still seal in the canner. Set the jars on the rack in the middle of the canner across the line between the handles at first. This helps stabilize your rack. Once you get all the jars on the rack, gently, if you can, lower the rack into the canner. Or, just drop it in there by losing your grip. You may have to add hot water to get the water level 1 to 2 inches above your large jars. Because I'm at over 5,000 feet altitude, I have to process my jars of tomatoes for 95 minutes, or 1 hour and 35 minutes. I have turned it down to medium-high heat. Otherwise, it starts to boil over on the edges. I wanted you to at least look down in there and see it's really hopping. Because these jars boil for so long, I recommend adding some boiling water at about the halfway point to keep the water level up above the tops of your jars. For me, that's at about 45 minutes. Just boil off some water in the microwave and add it. When the time is up, turn off your heat and carefully raise the rack to set it on the edge of the pot. Use your tongs to lift the jars. I turn them a little when I lift them to drain the water off the tops. Set them on a cutting board or cooling rack and dry them. They are hot, so be careful. As they cool, you'll hear the buttons on the lids pop as the jars seal. They all sealed. Now I have my tomatoes to add to all of my wonderful dishes this winter. Thank you for joining me in Oma's Kitchen. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll upload more tasty videos soon, and a special shout out to Moon Pie and Lil Bit. Till next time.